Hello, guys. Welcome back to BGD, Big Boys and Chill. On this week's episode, we talk about training for two, balancing athleticism and strength. The big boys talk about what it's like training with two sports and how each sport impacts the other, and what you can do to maximize your gains from each sport. So, if you are watching this on YouTube, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It'll help us out a lot. If you're listening to this on Spotify, give us a follow. Hope you guys enjoy this week's episode of BGD, Big Boys and Chill. Just curious, like, do you guys have a different sort of training style like back then compared to now, or was it like was it something that you just kind of kept throughout the time? Like it was working back then. I'm just gonna stick with it now, or like for you, Darren, like when you were doing equip back then, and then when you came back into raw, like what was the training like?
Well, the thing is, we actually trained. We actually trained raw. We did very little whip work except close to meets back when we were still competing in equipment. So the transition from that sort of style of training to going raw was actually more natural than actually while I was competing equipped. That makes sense.
Mm.
Later on, when I made the transition into MMA, I actually lifted for about a year, but I wasn't recovering fast enough to get back into training for my boxing. So I stopped lifting for 6 years, and I noticed when I stopped doing strength work, the injuries started occurring again. Older, and right now I do back to lifting and stuff in the gym, and noticed that just helped everything regards to overall health and safety.
So it was kind of you were lifting on its own for a bit. You got into BJJ.
Yep.
You were still lifting the way you were back then when you were doing powerlifting,
Yep.
and that kind of complemented it. Is it?
Well, when I made the transition to MMA,
Yeah.
I basically stopped lifting.
Right.
So I did a lot of other work, and I focused more on the technical aspect of fighting. But as I stopped training so frequently, and as I got older, 30, and I went back to train strength work, noticed that's what started recovering.
Yeah, training and BJJ, right? Like the training styles between like when you're solely doing powerlifting and transitioning to doing strength training with BJJ as well.
Well, I don't know where to start. I mean, it is actually very different. Long story short, basically just want to avoid overtraining, right? And that comes down to, specificity of what you're doing. So when you're doing powerlifting, progression is very easy to trace, go through your standard periodization cycles, whether it's linear or not, and track bit by bit over time and progress from there. But in jiu-jitsu, there could be, or in MMA, there could be days where you beat up from training. You have to taper down your training. So there's a lot of like experience and feedback that's required from external coaches to monitor verbal progression. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, you still want to progress, whether it's in jiu-jitsu or any other sport. But how to do that's kind of like
it's the art. Yeah,
it's an art, man.
Yeah, it is an art.
Yeah. So I mean, the reality is there's no better way to build absolute strength than basically just don't overtrain, man. Long story short, just don't overtrain, and as long as you're not overtraining, you're gonna get progression. But trying to identify all the different factors that go into your training is the hard part, especially when there's so many different variables. So, for example, in grappling, it's very anaerobic, and in striking, it's very aerobic. So, trying to balance both of that with strength training just adds another dimension of difficulty.
Right. What about you, Zara? Like, I guess with variability as well. Like, like I guess that kind of mirrors the strongman, like powerlifting kind of style of training that we were talking about before, right? What's different with your training, like back then versus now? Like, are you using the same kind of training style, or is it? What was it like?
Well, I just started, back then. First few years of training and lifting, and I've always had this mentality and mindset. I'm a firm believer of when you're new, you want to hit every angle as much as possible. So you want to cover all those lacking parts. It comes back to the same thing as I mentioned before this, but that is more specific because you work towards the weakness, the weak points and the weaker links. But when I first started, all I could think of was get strong at every part. Just hit every part and everything, this and that. So there won't be any, weaknesses around you. And yeah, I mean, along the way, things have changed, obviously, because I have to be more specific. Um, for the first few years, definitely it's the same thing because to me, if something works for you or for anyone, stick with it until you can't progress with it anymore. That's how I treat training, even for my clients. That's how I do it. And then if they start plateauing or whatever, I'll move them into something else, and I'll try to think of what can make him or her better in lifting. Um, but yeah, I mean, as you get more seasoned in the sport, you tend to see things much clearer. Like, oh, I haven't been eating well. That's probably one of the reasons why, I'm not progressing. I haven't been sleeping well. It's pretty easy actually because if you see everyone, let's say if we have 10 specimens or 10 athletes that starts at 16 years old or so, down the road when they hit 18, 19, 20, we know the change of their routines. Or they gonna go to unis, they're gonna have dates, this and that. They have more factors like that Darren mentioned before. So it's a simple pattern. Once you understand it, then you know how to tackle it. But yeah, coming back to training wise, it changes to I mean, it has changed to become more specific, if you get what I mean. There's nothing like special about it. It's just more specific, I would say. If you're liking at this point, you have to do more of it. That's just how it works.
So your training has become more specific over time. Do you still do strongman training right now?
Not really. The thing with strongman is I do strongman training 2 months before the competition. That's all.
I see. So like mostly out of comp, like off season, I guess it's pretty much just general prep, like just getting stronger, building up the.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Right.
Because to me, I mean, squat, bench, and deadlift is the base of all strength to me. So when I transit to strongman competition, I just need to spice things up. Just branch it out into different things. If you have a strong base, nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you work on your cardio? I guess the component of strongman. Like
I
powerlifting.
work my way around it because in strongman we know we have time limits. 60 seconds, 90 seconds. Usually that's the fixed time. There's never been any strongman competitions with, I mean, more than that or lesser than that. So what I would do is I would work slightly more than that. Let's say if I have loading race, which is carrying objects and running around back and forth. So I would work towards with heavier weights and slightly longer distance. And usually I would time it. What's my average? Yeah. And how many mistakes did I do during training? So the thing about strongman is like at some events you have a lot of good guys. Let's say in the strongman competition there's usually 6 to 8 events. And you need to get a lot of points for each event. One thing about strongman is you have to know your competitors, what they're good at, what they're not good at.
Right.
And you have to be very consistent at every event. You don't have to place first at every event. I mean, what's the point of placing first, and then maybe the last 2 events you get 6th, 7th? So what I've been doing is I've been I can see weaknesses. I mean, like from my competitors. So let's say if I know he's really good at this, I'm probably going to finish second. So I'm not going to focus too much on that event because there's no way for me to beat him. But for the things that I can beat him, I will go all out.
Right.
Yeah, and usually there's 4 to 5 guys that's good at something, so they will play around the points. So if maybe 4 out of 5 is good at something and bad at something, there's probably a lot of points playing around. And if you are the one who is consistent and good at everything, then you're probably gonna do very well. That's what I've been doing.
Right. So because then your average is just higher, and like you just basically get more points there. Yeah. Because so consistent. Like I guess that's with the nature of the sport, right? Because you have to do many events, and so it's more like it, in a way, like, do you think that strongman is a more truer test of strength compared to powerlifting in that sense, because you are in more, I guess, functional positions maybe, or what is your take on it? Just
Well, to me, strength is very subjective, even though it's a very simple word. I would rather say, if you want to look at brute strength, you look at powerlifting. But if you want to look at combinations of explosiveness, power, speed, strength, endurance, you look at strongman. It's multiple things combined into one. That's why you see, like, in some strongman, world's strongest man or whatever, you can see, some guys, oh, this guy's pressing 200 kilos above head, but he fucked at other events. So it takes a lot of things, a lot of factors to make a strong man. You
Right.
can't just be strong. You need to be smart as well. Like, for an instance, let's say this event. There's a certain event, as an example, a truck pull. No one is good at it, and you're going crazy over it. You know you're going to win it, but you're going all out. There's no point in doing that. You just need to go for the win.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about being smart. If you look at Brian Shaw, I would say he's the smartest strongman ever on earth, because he would go to the whiteboard and point things out where he can improve on. Even if it makes him 1% stronger, he would do it. It's those kind of things. It's always about going back to the whiteboard and work on things.
Definitely.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Darren? Like, strength and MMA, like is it an advantage for you against your opponents? Having that strength, like, versus
me personally, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Strength definitely helps. Like, two opponents with the same technical ability, the stronger ones are gonna win. Just one of the many factors that goes into the overall ability to perform on that day. So, but MMA is very different. I mean, like, different people fight differently. You have strikers who would have to focus on speed and conditioning more than anything else. You have guys who try to finish the fight early. You have guys who try to drag the fight into later rounds. But in regards to overall performance and generally speaking, strength is always beneficial, whether it's MMA or powerlifting or any other sport, or just being a human being for that matter.
Yeah.
How to get stronger.
I guess that's a pro, right? That's a pro being strong.
It gets handy. Very handy.
Right.
All right, that's it for this week's episode of BGD Big Boiz and Chill. If you guys liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you guys in next week's episode.